Okay, I think we're good to, I think we're going.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, it's 3 minutes past 5, and my name is John Reinhardt. I'm the first chair of the Wiscasset Historic Commission, and I'm going to call the meeting to order. Would you like to introduce yourself to the cameras? Speak into the microphone, because double check with the on.
Just hit the little on button.
Yeah, there's a green button there.
Test one. Test.
All right, why don't you start?
Oh, me.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Logan. HBC.
Good.
Leslie Roberts.
HBC.
Albert Gordon contract.
Good. Wendy Donovan called me today, and she is retiring from the Wiscasset Historic Commission.
Ah.
Oh, no.
And personal reasons, she will send a letter in. She's aiming to send a letter in now, and so we'll be looking, and I will contact Marion for another member
Okay.
for that. We need 5 members. Right now we have 4. And this is also going to build into something else that occurred today. So I'll move directly into the Certificate of Appropriateness review. I attended this morning the Lincoln County Historical Association.
John, minutes.
Oh, approved minutes, you're right. Oh, I apologize. Oh, let's go back to the minutes. All
My
right.
deathless prose, after all.
Yeah, after all, Susan's written them. And thank you again, Susan. All right, I'd like to accept any additions, subtractions to the 6th September minutes. I especially like that one comment, she remains unhappy. I thought, unfortunately, that's true. Okay, the only thing that I will also be attending the Maine Historic Preservation Workshop on grants.
Oh,
Which
you and
is-
Leslie are both going to do
Yes,
that?
both.
Okay.
In fact, I will be able to add 2 people on that too. Any corrections or retractions? Then I will entertain a vote of approval, a motion to approve the minutes.
I have to correct something.
Okay,
Mhm.
fine.
No, on the discussion with Sherry Dunbar, what is on the disclosure form, there is a place on the form
Yeah.
for disclosures, but it does not specifically specify historic or historic preservation properties.
Right.
So it's not basically designated for, not to say that it's in a historic district, it's just asking, are you in any district? Village 1, Village 2, it doesn't say historic district.
I don't think well,
There's a place to put it,
I
But
said
it's
that
not
there's a place
specific.
on the disclosure form for that information, that the property is in the district.
All righty. That is in fact the case, yes.
There is a typo. Gordon suggested that a sigh be erected, which would be cute, but
Signed.
Yeah, we can all stand out there and go, it's so funny.
Thank you, Leslie.
Uh-oh. That could be misconstrued.
Okay, yeah, so are you satisfied with it?
Yeah.
Okay. then I will
In that
accept
direction, yes.
a motion to accept the minutes of 6 September 2018 by show of hands. All those in favor? All those opposed? It goes 4-0. Good, that's nice. Thank you, Gordon, for reminding me. So, certificate of appropriateness review, that's what's caused a lot of problems, and I have to admit, I was the cause of one of the problems. And the problems are because, and I had a long talk of enlightenment with Marion Anderson, our town manager. And Catherine Odonato is really overworked. And a lot of things are, she said, things are not coming back and forth. And that was one of the problems. I erred because I was going to send it in Thursday, which would give us 5 days. And then I waited, and I said, no, it can't, nothing will happen. So I waited Monday to send it in. And then the point was, I did not fulfill the 5 days. That is my wrong, and I take full responsibility for it.
So John.
On the other hand, I had a short conversation with David Pope this morning because I attended the Lincoln County Historical Association meeting. And I explained to David that we had to get letters sent out to the abutters before we could do it. And David had put, as you saw on the date of the certificate of appropriateness, 5 September. And I talked to David on 4 September, which is, if everything had worked, we would have the right time in order for him to come in. I told David that I told him the problems that we were faced with. He said, no problem at all. I'll be happy to come in the first Thursday in October when we have the meeting. And that should take care of, there's a problem here. I don't know who's going to write the letters to the abutters. Because it's been explained to me, again by the town manager, that the monies of the $1,000 that we've been talking back and forth, that Susan had put it up and in front of the board, is only for a secretary for us. Now, what I propose, in order to get these things done, I've written letters to the people who have gone through, and these are the people that I have written letters to saying what the board has done.
Well,
But as for going to the abutters, I would prefer to have would have somebody else do that. That is a time-consuming thing that I'm afraid with everything else that I've got going on, it's going to be really difficult. So I propose that we make an advertisement that's put in the paper for a secretary.
Okay, that should be like new business though.
Okay, well, I'm just saying these things because of what
Right, for David Pope. Well, in reading David Pope's COA, this is not a permanent structure, therefore he does not have to come before the HPC. It's not a permanent structure. It's a temporary structure on skids. And our requirements are that it's a permanent structure. It's also not visible from the front. So
You're
as far as
absolutely right.
he should not even have to come in front of us. So any fee that he has paid should be returned to him, and then this is just, he can go for it.
Okay, I will accept that for, a motion. Would anybody else like to?
I think we could debate this. I was looking through based on Pam's observation, and I think it's a little gray, but it is built on skids, and so, I think we probably could consider it a temporary structure. The question is, the normal process would be that David would have contacted the codes enforcement officer. The codes enforcement officer would have said to David, you do or you do not need a COA. Is that correct? I understand that to be the
That's
step
actually,
on the process.
that's what the process should be.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And
So-
that's within our particular ordinance.
Did this happen because our new codes enforcement officer, Bruce, is maybe not familiar with the ordinance, or like?
There was no
You're
codes
right.
enforcement officer
At that
At the
time.
time?
Yeah.
at the time.
Okay,
Marion was theoretically doing the job of the codes enforcement
Okay.
officer. I don't know, she may have been on vacation, David may not have known that,
okay.
don't know. We did not have a codes enforcement officer designated at that time.
Gotcha.
So it was difficult, because I talked to David on that, and I said, you know, it's balancing back and forth. If we've always decided that if you could see it from the street, that was one of the processes that we used. in the
Right, you
past.
won't be able to see this from the street. This is
Well, you can
People's
see, you can
driveway.
see, yeah, you
No,
can see.
because it's back, when you look at the house from the street, straight on from
Right.
Federal Street,
Yeah,
it's to the right of the house. It's-
Right.
It's going to be viewable from the street.
there's a
Unless
tree
he
there.
moves- Unless he moves it closer to the driveway. If he puts it where he says on his diagram, you will be able to see it from the street.
The bushes and the trees and foliage and it's way back there. And you can't see it from Hooper Street.
I think the question is whether or not,
Putting it here.
whether it is visible or not. It is a structure that needs a COA.
I don't believe it does because it's temporary.
Yes.
And I think that supersedes anything further than that. This is a temporary structure on skids. He can move it, remove it. He can move it to somebody else's property if he wants to.
But he does, if he does move it, no, he wouldn't have to contact us or the code enforcement officer would.
It's just a temporary structure on skids. There's no.
Well, it's a
there's
tool
no-
shed, really.
Right, so there's no
Exactly.
foundation.
Yeah.
And it's nothing permanent. Like, every year I put up a temporary fence in my front yard, it's temporary, I take it up and it goes away.
It's slippery
Isn't it-
that if somebody decided to build some weird shanties on skids, they could in theory be living in something that is considered temporary.
But they would still have to go to the code enforcer
That's
for
true.
that. And then if they wanna live in it, then they have to get a
Variance.
CO,
Right.
which would be there. But according to the ordinance, which I read through, it doesn't make the requirements that he needs to have a COA.
I'm on both sides of this. I could go either way. It is visible from the play yard, I believe.
But that only comes into play if it's a permanent structure. It's a
I see
temporary
what you're saying,
structure.
permanent versus moving.
Right.
Very true.
The last tool shed that we worked with was the yacht club tool shed. And was a permanent structure,
Yeah.
put onto the house. So you
And it's
really-
connected to the building.
yeah.
Right, this is not connected to a
This
building,
is
it's
not.
freestanding, it's on skids, it's entirely temporary.
Okay.
Can you give me the reference?
I'm looking for the
In the-
section
In the
Ordinance.
In the
ordinance,
ordinance, yeah, I've got a copy of the ordinance.
structure, anything constructed or erected, the use of which requires a fixed location on or in the ground, or an attachment to something having a fixed location on the ground, including buildings, billboard signs, commercial park rides and games, carports, porches, and other building features, but excluding sidewalks, fences, driveways, parking lots, and non-commercial swimming pools.
What section is that?
That is just
Definitions.
above 10.3,
Then it's page 4.
which is under definitions, 10.2, 10.2.1, under the term.
It is, it's two paragraphs above
Structure.
1.3.
I would argue 10.5.1.1.
10.5.1.1.
New construction of a principal or accessory building visible from a public street where such building will be located in an historic district or on an historic site. Does not use the word structure.
Is that ABC, which one is that?
A.
A. But
Does not use the word structure.
then,
Sorry, I'm just
I
being
know,
the
I
devil's
understand.
advocate here.
Right. That could apply.
Gina, if you could turn the sound off the phone?
What page is this on that you found? Why don't I have things like that?
Page 83.
83. I don't have 83.
So essentially, it should say structure instead of building.
Essentially, it doesn't.
Right,
And no, I'm not sure I do agree that it should say structure.
but there's no definition of building. Buildings, structures and historic places which are classified under historic preservation ordinance.
Gotta go to the glossary.
Cemeteries, parks.
Okay, is there any more discussion? Are we, unfortunately, we can vote. It could be 2-2. So I can't run
In
out
which
on the
case,
street
motion
and grab
fails.
some more members, but
In which case the motion fails, John?
the motion failed, yes.
Well, I mean, because we have a little bit more time, we make a final decision when we meet with David, right? We have a week to review this before we actually meet with him, don't
Do we need to meet with them?
we? Right.
That's
Because
the
that's
thing.
the question.
I don't think we need to meet with them. We didn't-
Well, we could do exactly what you said, return the monies and say that we have talked it and discussed it, and we feel that he doesn't have to have a COA because of the fact that the tool shed is on skids. And we don't feel that is enforced within the ordinance.
Maybe we should just send it back to the code enforcement.
Yeah, well, he could have, that's what I was gonna tell him, that, if he wasn't satisfied with coming next, in 2 weeks, that he could go to the code enforcement officer. And I believe that the ordinance states that he can get permission to do something with the code enforcement officer's, okay on it.
Well, I don't want us to send David back and feel like we're sending him on a wild goose chase. I think we should reach out to the code enforcer and get his opinion on this and come back to David with a firm decision one way or the other. Yes, it deserves a COA. No, it's temporary and we'll give you your money back and sorry for your delay. Is that an appropriate?
I don't, I think that's our question for brand new COA. And I would think that you should be able to decide that. You're the ones who are working with the ordinance.
That's true.
Pam has a motion. Hasn't been seconded, so.
Anybody second?
I think I'm going to second Pam's motion.
Run the wording back around.
Okay,
That we,
send a letter to David.
saying that his COA is unnecessary for a temporary structure.
I'll second.
Okay, would you read? Susan, secretary.
Can you say it again?
Moves that we send a letter to David, telling him he does not need a COA for this since it is on skids.
Temporary structure, yeah. Motion to inform him. I don't know that we need to send a letter. We could probably just call him.
No, you're gonna need to send them a letter because now that the town has his money, now they have to
Right,
process
they
it
have
and
to.
turn it back.
Yep,
to him.
okay.
And then, I'm not sure. I think that should be a separate motion.
To return his.
Yeah.
Well, that money is supposed to take care of the informing
I
the
know.
butters. So,
But I think you have to, I think it would be cleaner if you made it a motion to require John or somebody to go to the town and say,
send it back.
send him a check.
Okay, so first motion is to inform Mr. Pope that,
By letter.
inform Mr. Pope by letter that his COA is unnecessary due to it being a temporary structure.
His project does not require a COA.
Right.
Okay, it's been read.
Did you send
All
this
those in,
Sorry.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Second?
there is a second, Gordon, already second. All those in favor? 4-0. Good.
Yes.
And second
And we
motion
do need
to-
a letter because that is part, even emails have to have letters in back of them anyway, so.
Yeah.
And I'd like to make a motion that John inform the town to return his fee of $25,
Or whatever he's paying.
or whatever he's paid if he has.
Okay, great.
I second that motion.
All those in favor of the motion? Would you like to read it, Susan?
Move that John ask the town to return any fees that David paid.
Now, just for my enlightenment, does that have to go directly to the select board, or can I go through the town manager?
I think you go through the town manager.
Yeah, I was thinking so. Okay, good.
probably will have to put it on the agenda.
I
Would it
don't
go
know
to
about that.
Vernice? I mean, this is a fee that's paid. I don't know that it needs to go to either one of them.
Yeah, I was just thinking of the, to the treasurer.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
Well, I'll find out. I'll
Yeah,
find out.
ask the question, because I see these things that show up on the agenda of discussions about returning monies to individuals in town that have paid taxes, have paid this, have paid that, and they got money coming back. The board has to approve it.
I don't know that that's
the question. It may
necessary.
be immaterial.
Okay, we have a motion, have we voted on that one?
We
I was
haven't
writing,
voted
didn't
on the
see.
second motion. I believe there was still some conversation on that. If not, is there a second on the second motion?
Leslie
I already
seconded.
seconded.
Okay, Leslie, all those in favor of the motion, would you please read it?
Moved. John asked the town to return any fees that were paid.
To David Poole. Yeah, make sure they realize that we're sending it to David back.
All right, then it would be removed. Move that John asked the town to return any fees paid by David Pope.
Good. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? 4-0. Good. Thank you, guys. Super. Old business. Discussion of the Maine Preservation Commission workshops. Before we go into the discussion of it, I'd like to tell you about my meetings with the Lincoln County Historical Association. And I invited them to go along with us because they are part of the historical entity, and I have been trying to involve them into the Historic Commission.
It's a great idea.
And they're doing a magnificent job with the old jail.
Yeah,
And it's just,
They're a
it
good bunch.
seems to be the better thing. And let me tell you something that, you really don't have to write this down, but it was a delight. Now, I was president of this group for 4 years, 5 years, 4 years. And I did not appreciate until I got to this meeting, and there were a whole room full of people that I knew who were really interested in historic preservation. Every one of them. And I felt like I had walked into a new world, because we're always fighting tooth and nail with people to make them recognize the value of historic preservation. And even my working on my own house, it's still a pain because I have to do all the hammering, and then I have to figure out, is this going to be a COA? In fact, I had Gordon over the other day saying, do you think this is going to be a COA? But it was such a pleasure working with them. So I invited them because they're looking for new monies. I invited the president, Bill Danielson,
Bill's nice.
and also Mrs. Gemmel, and I cannot think of her first name.
Sally.
Yeah, and she asked me if they could attend, and I said absolutely. And I had that thing that they all sent out, and so they're gonna, and I'll drive.
Great.
So we're gonna have 4 people there, and what it is that they're gonna learn about how they can work it, because they work with the state Maine Preservation Commission and Historical Commission, and they're always looking for money, and they're doing a great job. So I figured, well, let's bring them into the mix, and who knows, we might be able to get another commissioner out of it. And I've invited them to attend the meetings, because the more people we have on our side, and you can print this, the more people we have on our side, the better we are. So, would you like to tell what we did? at our particular workshop? Without the frills?
Well, there was a lot of. The main speaker had a lot of, carried most of the thing. Megan was the introductory person, but Christy, don't remember her name, last name, carried most of the discussion, and it was primarily a informational opening on the why and things of historic preservation. But the main focus wound up being that historic preservation commissions and their members are, as we've tried to identify, the ambassadors to your neighborhood as far as promoting historic preservation. And the kind of the main thing was to establish yourself and know what need your preservation programs in your community, and be a spokesperson for your commission and your community as far as historic preservation. The commission is not just supposed to be about COAs. The term that I use for it is public history, making your local public aware of the history that is within your community and those aspects and structures, archaeological sites, streetscapes that are historic, making the people in your community, not just those that are interested in history, but those that are just, they live there, but they're not involved in the history. So when they want to ask, what is your commission, or what do you do? It comes down to they have this they call it the elevator talk or the elevator speech.
And from what I hear, Leslie wants to see us.
I do. I want to hear you pitch.
I have to be honest, I did not really develop a pitch because I was involved in something else during that time frame. But my outline for my pitch indicated that I am interested in preservation because I've been a student of history for my whole life. And after I retired, I had an opportunity to start looking in my then community and found a lot of places that had been lost. And just by looking and doing a little personal research, opened up an avenue with the State Historic Preservation Office that found a building that I had found something that had been overlooked and was actually probably the second oldest building in the county that had been identified as being newer. So I had this opportunity, and I would like to have the local folks that we deal with think about what they see around them and look at it and try to envision it as, well, it says that it was built about 1825. But if I look at it a little more closely and learn a little more about preservation and architecture, I could find out that it may have been built in 1800. It's older than it was. There's something under the building. So that there's a story to be learned by studying and getting involved in your historic preservation in your neighborhood.
Cool. Thank you.
That's a really good elevator one. The one that perhaps our new commissioners don't realize. Gordon has spent a lot of time in historic preservation down in New Jersey. And I rely on him a lot just to find out how we can work this here. Because he's been through the wars there. And really, I hate to say it really is a war. Because we always seem to be on the defensive. And I'd like to be on the offensive line a little bit more.
So it sounds like the workshop was largely about outreach via social media, is that right?
Yes.
So
yes.
Facebook.
They made it into kind of like a networking thing, and I think that you put out what came from Megan because they gave us a list of all the attendees from the various preservation commissions in the state that did attend, and there were like 40 people there.
There were 40 people, yes, and there were people who were
basically they're all working from the same standpoint that we are. A day late, $1 short, and 3 weeks behind. And they all want to try and find, like you folks are going to the grant writing thing. There are groups that want to find out about, each town is different. Some towns or some commissions are a little more ahead in one area, but not as far ahead in another. So it was a networking kind of thing to get a handle on who's got what's going on in the next neighborhood up the street. And, but nobody seems to have the best. Everybody's got a problem somewhere that somebody else may have an answer to, and that's one of the things. But I came out of it, I'm kind of getting the impression that, no, I'm not going to say that, that wouldn't be right. So yeah, it was a networking operation and sponsored by and supported by the State Historic Preservation Commission. And they seem to be looking to be a little more proactive to the communities than they have been. Yeah. I mean, they're out there and you call them and you get a phone conversation back, but there's stuff that there needs to be a better connection. And basically at this point, they're trying to get the local preservation commissions to be more active in their communities, but touch base with other ones so you're pulling together. That's what I saw.
Good. Well, I had a lot of interest going on because I projected the ideas that we were faced with, especially the one with the real estate people. And during the break, I had I had people from Biddeford come up to me, and also Saco, and they're having the same problem that we have of brokers outside of the state not knowing what's going on in the places that they're selling. Mm-hmm. And it's so, we've talked about this before, it's not necessarily the local real estate person that's, not telling it, but it's also the people outside the state that don't have the word or haven't gone looking for the word. And Saco, and it was Christine, I believe she's with the Historic Preservation there, and she said that they had it printed on the tax papers. And I talked to our budget person here Tuesday night before the board meeting. I said, is this possible to have happen? And it would be really good, I mean, it would really lock people in, because when they get that paper, and if it says, you know, whatever the special wording should be, like your house is in the historic district, that might be as simple as you could put it. And this, just talking to them, finding that they're really in the same boat we are. Again, no money. Sometimes it's really difficult for them to get people together. A lot of them have some wonderful sites. I know Saco has a great building that they use, and they have speakers, and it's almost like they're another state preservation commission. I suggest that anybody who goes into that area, go into the middle of Saco, and you'll see a huge building. And they have shows, they have, they're a completely different approach to what we have. There was one interesting thing that I found out, is that of the 40 people, let's say there were 40, 20 were, let's see, do you think it was 30 were or 30 were actually part of the commissions being paid? And only 10 of us were actually volunteers? Or was it more 20/20?
It was more 20/20.
Okay. But there were people, and it was really interesting talking to these people. As you well know, I enjoy talking to people. And the ones who were paid were much stricter in their attitudes toward the state than the ones who were actually volunteers. In fact, Damariscotta was there, and they're building, and they mentioned Susan, and I said, oh yeah, Susan went over to Consulate, and I met, and I can't think of his name, but he came up to us and we talked about it, about what they're faced with. And I think the problems that they're faced with are really different than ours, because they've got this parking lot that is, you know, somebody wants to put in large buildings, and I'm saying, you better stop it now before somebody actually buys it and does it. And they got a beautiful historic district, which starts on Elm Street and starts on Main Street, but you have to remember, back in 1940, that burned down. There was a fire there, and it's completely destroyed that entire district. But the outside districts, and also Newcastle, right across the river. I just found out from the president, or from Ed Kavanaugh, that one of his friends just bought this huge monster building and land. I've played tennis there, and I always wondered who owned it. Have you ever been down Glidden Street?
Yeah, I knew them well.
And it's a beautiful building, but it just
It's
sold.
amazing.
And it's got
It's
6,
amazing that it sold at all.
yeah, 6 fireplaces, a tennis court, swimming pool, right near the river. I mean, it's
Riverfront
just-
acreage.
Yeah, and gorgeous acreage. So that's what Newcastle is going to be faced with. And it's really funny, when LCHA took over the Bradford House, there was a Damariscotta Historical Association. And I mean,
That's Chapman Hall House.
yeah, the
Yeah.
Chapman Hall House, not the Bradford House. Chapman Hall House. They were the oldest historic commission I'd seen, because most of them were in their late 80s. And so this sort of went the way of time, and now they're trying to rebuild.
It's not Historic Commission, John, it was Historic Society.
Okay, historic
Historic
society,
Society.
yeah.
Big
It's
difference.
different than our, but I was really, I thought that was wonderful, that we got to talk to people. And that, I think, is one of the good things, and I'm looking forward to the one that we're gonna do over in Belfast.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Because as you all were at the select board, we have to look for grants in order to use the money that we would like to use. which I'll bring up under new business later. But it was really worth it. It was better than the one that I went to about the first time over in Gardner. And we sat right by the person who was from Gardner. And she was a paid employee. And I asked her how the music building was, of course. You know, it's a big, beautiful opera house. And they've been pouring money into that. And they're having problems with MDOT. And MDOT wants to do a whole bunch with roads crossing and a railroad station. And I said, good luck. I'll pray for you.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was really well worthwhile. And it was free.
That's good.
So,
And with those connections, perhaps as we work on our website, we can include links on our site to their site. So
Absolutely.
we can, and vice versa.
absolutely, I think that's
we
one of
can
the
start
really
networking.
positive things. And I would like you to bring that up in the new business.
Mhm.
And so we can talk about
Yes.
it, especially after that thing that you sent to all of us, which I do have a copy of, so we can work on that. Okay, the discussion for the select board meeting. I'd like to hear some comments of how can we make the information we're trying to get to them be on the warrant. Susan, you can open this up.
I think we are not asking for very drastic changes. The real problem point that I saw that got the most discussion was the changing of the borders. Nobody on the select board except possibly Catherine Martin Savage really has concept of where these borders are. You know, I would like to see it left as is, as you know. And I think on that one, you might present to the selectmen, don't put it on the warrant. The hardship thing, I really don't know where that's going to go. Judy Colby was being a little one shoulder down about it, and so were several other people. That is boilerplate. It is state. It has been tested in the courts. As I said at the meeting, I don't think there's any need to get our lawyer to okay something that is boilerplate, but that's their decision. They will have, I think they will put it on the warrant for next year.
I sure hope so.
Yeah, and I would like to see us, frankly, add some to it. And we have time to do that between now and say February 1st. Get it to the ORC, have the public hearing. If they change what you want to have done, fight for what you want before it gets to the selectmen. And then, when it comes to the selectmen, and I don't know if that would, I think the public hearing was by the planning board, but when it gets to the selectmen, I think it is essential that you be concise, speak to the point that is brought up and to nothing else, and know your stuff cold.
Yeah, even if we rehearse, it's rehearsed and reviewed before the actual public
Yeah.
meeting, so there's,
Concise, direct, to the point.
yeah.
I just,
Yeah.
there's no sense telling them how wonderful you are. They don't care.
It's like a
The
business.
people who know that you're wonderful already know it. The other people don't give a damn.
It's basically a business transaction, and this is our proposal, this is what we need, this is the benefits, boom, 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 direct, short, concise.
Exactly.
I think that recognizing sitting over there and looking at the people that were sitting over here, Susan, did you get the impression that I did the same that I did? That of this board, none of them have actually read that ordinance?
You think?
You think?
The only person who may have read at least parts of it, I think, is Catherine.
I agree.
I agree also, that's.
And I don't think that
The other thing is-
they were even, they couldn't comprehend, or either they couldn't or they didn't want to, why we were asking for that at least to be 2 questions.
Right,
Correct.
but that was not made clear by the ORC, which should have made it clear.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I think Carl, bless his heart, was caught totally off guard. I called him, but he didn't get back to me in time for me to tell him that they were looking for him to say something. Because unlike John, I don't think Carl even knew that, you know, the ORC was on the agenda to say anything.
In fact, he said that.
Yeah, we're
Well,
gonna have to make sure that.
But
They're
that's
the
not,
ones
that's
that
no
have to
excuse.
present
That's
this.
right, that's right.
Right.
So, I think it would also serve us better if we present it again or present other changes, not to hit them with the whole
Yeah.
20 pages of ordinance, just the things that are going to change. I was really sort of horrified by that, frankly,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, because apparently that's how it was given to them,
Yeah.
was the whole
It's
thing with the
overwhelming.
lines and everything. And,
and it should have been just the things that were being changed.
exactly.
Crossing out this, putting in
Yeah.
this.
When you looked at the supporting documents for that meeting, it was
Mm.
87 pages. I mean, it all wasn't the
Yeah.
historic preservation ordinance.
No, but it was, you're right. It was-
It's too much. I
Which
can't
19 was
fault
just
them
that.
for not having read the ordinance. They're busy, they're doing a million things. It's a lot. So yeah, I think the next time, that's a good point. Just give them the pages they need to look at. Make sure we stand up, walk through every single change, explain it in layman's terms, and just, and sit back down and we practice it before the meeting. So we've gone through everything and we're all on board. We've got our story straight.
Well, we were told that the ORC was gonna do that. We, the only reason that I was able to stand up is that I had been briefing myself on that before. And because I knew Gordon hadn't gotten through to Carl. And I was under after we spent all those hours with the ORC and talking about it
Yeah.
and crossing things out, and Jackie came up and we finally had a final copy from Jackie. I thought within the chain of command, so to speak, the next thing was going from the ORC to the appeals board. And I thought, no, okay, good,
No,
I didn't know
It has
that.
nothing to do with the appeals.
Okay,
Planning board, John.
Okay.
You're wanting to say planning board, not appeal.
okay, I'm sorry, planning board. But after it didn't come out, I agree with you, it has to be put on paper, and it has to be simply put in like A, B, C, D, E, and this is what we want.
Mhm.
And make it short, simple, and right to the point. Instead of dropping a huge ordinance on them. And I don't know about you guys, but I have to go through there a lot of times trying to figure out exactly what it means. And people have, they look at that, and I can imagine them throwing up their hands.
Yeah, I was horrified that Judy looked really upset at us, and I could see why. I mean, so yeah, we're gonna have to figure out a way to.
I don't
take the
think
burden off of
that
them.
what they had in front of them, which was the whole ordinance, was what Jackie provided them with.
That may have been it has to have been to a certain extent.
Because it was
Because
only 18
Marion,
pages.
that's what Marion posted.
Hmm.
So that's what Jackie presented, which is a perfectly legitimate way to present it. But for the ease and comfort of people who aren't as familiar
It
with the
needs to be
R25,
condensed, it needs to be condensed to what the
What's being
changes
done.
are, not the entire ordinance, including the new changes.
Yeah.
Well, here's a thought. If we have other changes that you want to do, that you send to the ORC, after the ORC does its thing and gets it back to us, we do our thing, and I'm perfectly willing to do this, and print it in my inimitable scarlet letters.
Yes,
And then it is very clear.
or yellow highlighter, might be easier to read.
That could be, either way. That certainly, you can print that
Yeah.
easily enough. And I think that might make it easier.
Okay.
And the most important one that was dropped or not put into the mill, so to speak, is the one that Gordon and I have been talking about. It's the plan, the map with all the nice little colors, and then the historic, then your ordinance on top of it. And when I was being enlightened the other day here in the town office, and Marion said, she said, I'm not sure we can change this. And I looked at her, and this was new information to me. She said, the tax map, and I still am not clear exactly saying, the tax map can't be changed. It has to be part of the map that is written. So when we're talking about changing areas, there's going to be a change, and she was saying, and I'll have to get back, maybe you and I can go in and actually talk to her about this. Because this was something that she was talking about sales and economic and taxes. And she said, I don't think that this particular part should be changed. And so I'm always interested in trying to figure out what they're saying. So, you and I talked about one map on top of the other. Are we going to change the size of it?
Well, that map that's on ours, on that rectangle, it says very approximate.
That
that's
is
it,
the
that's-
original rectangle.
It says very approximate historic overlay district boundary. So it's very approximate, which means that I don't believe that they're taking property boundaries into consideration.
They aren't, because when that was done, which was, I don't know, almost 40 years ago now, the National Register accepted only a quadrangle of straight lines. That was it. They didn't want the property lines.
Okay, so let's just.
I have to check, but I think it's been amended at this point.
It may have been amended, but our acceptance has not been.
No.
So, if we want to amend it to have a whole different thing, that's a whole different process.
Yeah, that's the.
As it stands now, we have a National Historic District.
Right,
The overlay is the Wiscasset Historic District. Does not include all of the National Historic District. It does include areas outside the National Historic District. Why this has been such a problem with some people, I don't know. But at the moment, that's what we've got to work with, is our overlay. I am in the process, heaven help me, Donald went off and got me colored pencils. Thank goodness, because I had to erase once. I will be getting you a tax map of the historic district which will be color-coded as to what is separately listed
And ours.
as National Register, which came in before we did the whole National Register thing.
Yeah.
What is non-contributing for whatever reason, like the gas stations across the street, the Hackett's garage thing. The contributing structures that were included with the National Register paperwork. The further contributing structures that the state has decided are contributing. And then the gray area of things that haven't been anything done by, and we probably should do something about surveying them. And,
Notary of those is the HAPS properties, right? Historic Survey, the National Historic Survey buildings make up the biggest part of the contributing.
yes, but the state has determined a lot more too.
Oh yeah, through their
Yeah,
surveys that they've done, but the most significant ones up to the point of doing the nomination were the HAPS properties.
right.
And what was that, like 13 of them or something?
Oh no, there were many more than that. And the original. How did I bring that with me?
You mean like those
Got
that are,
so many lists.
you mean those on the other side of like Churchill Street?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't bring that, because I'm working with it on the maps. The state has given us a list of the contributing
Historically contributed?
yes,
Okay.
that they have determined beyond the ones that we originally submitted with our application to become a National Historic District. They have, the ones that we contributed then were, I forget, I don't know what the criteria was. Marguerite did that. I don't know. My house was on it. Why? Because the governor once lived there. Because it was built in by a fairly well-known architect in 1792. The Octagon House is a bad example. Anyway, mostly there were the older houses. There are a lot of other ones that should be included, that the state has also decided should be included. Theoretically, they shouldn't have state funds destroying contributing property. That's a whole other fight.
A whole other story.
Was that the inventory that they did like in 2000? Or have they done another one since then?
It's a couple of different ones. I'll have to get you the list, Gordon, because I do
No,
not.
yeah, you don't have, yeah, I'm just curious, yeah, because you're working on it and, doing
Yeah.
dialogue.
What I'm trying to do, they have the addresses. I have the tax maps and the owners. And what I'm trying to do is match up all of that, which I'm going to send to the state. And at the same time, try to get my maps done.
Wow.
And I looked at those tax maps and I thought, this is deja vu. Been there, done that. Eek! I am going to try, after I get it done, I'm going to try laminating it and seeing if I can color over the lamination
Oh, that's a cute idea.
so that I can change more easily.
That's a good idea.
Or get like an overlay thing,
Yeah, or once it's all done, I can just color it through to the lamination. We did this on big tax maps for this whole for various zoning projects. And it's there, but anyway, I hope it'll be useful to you.
So,
One of the things that, excuse me for interrupting, one of the things that Marion did say, and this is 10.4.4.1, also, I've been asked to call the board on a readout on this, and you notice that the ORC has taken out the terms zoning districts of Village 1, Village 2, and Village Waterfront District. And that was Marion's point. They can't do that.
10.4
No, 'cause that-
point,
Those three items are what identifies the historic district, the overlay district.
Right?
And what came out of that meeting was those were the terms that if we went to the original rectangle, those terms would be eliminated.
Agreed.
But if that doesn't happen and we get to keep, and they vote to keep the existing overlay, they still exist. Village 1, Village 2, Village 3.
Agreed, but that's not the way
Well,
that's not the
that
way they're
needs to
looking
be
at it.
clarified then.
Yeah, and that's why
And that's
we
why
have
I
to
brought it up
clarify
to-
this exactly the way.
That's why I brought it up, to
Sure,
be the
absolutely.
point
I just
of
wanted to-
difference between the two maps.
So, and it states this, Wiscasset Historic District. For the Wiscasset Historic District is defined by the boundary of and the zoning districts is all taken out, of the National Historic District established in 1973.
That is the change
That's
we
the
asked
change.
them to make.
Right, but I'm just saying
But that's
that
the
Marion
one we want
pointed
to
that
raise a
out,
separate
that
question.
you can't take out those terms.
Of course you can.
They're gonna exist.
If you're
I agree,
redefining,
if they're gonna exist, great.
I'm sorry,
Okay, well, I'll find out
if you're
exactly what you mean by it.
redefining, I don't think she understands what we were doing or trying to do.
Okay,
I think it would be much simpler.
I think she thinks we're trying to change the tax maps.
I don't understand what we're trying to do. Are we trying to make the district smaller?
We
We're trying to go
we were
back to
asked,
the original or more
we were
defined?
asked by half a dozen people who were fairly vociferous about it, have not appeared since then. They were awfully upset that it was bigger than the National Historic District. No explanation has ever been given to me as to why they were so upset.
Are these like personal property owners?
yes,
Well,
But it was,
unfortunately, property owners come and go.
exactly. And I would suggest that we ask the selectmen to drop that article.
Yes,
I agree.
I agree.
Um,
I think we were
Just
only
because-
doing it to placate the folks because it was during the time frame of the witch hunt and
Yeah.
we were trying to get all the support we could get, so we said, yeah,
Well, we can't
we'll bring the
placate
question
anymore, now
up.
we
Well,
gotta stand up and be
that's
like
a moot
men.
point anymore.
Let's do a motion,
Yeah,
again.
sorry. So, the motion is to drop,
To ask the selectmen
yeah,
to drop request,
drop the request to, was it reconfigure? Restructure?
To reconfigure.
Reconfigure. The historic map.
The current historic district.
Historic overlay.
Overlay.
to
Yeah.
reconfigure the historic overlay.
No,
We're going to drop.
Request.
No,
drop the request to reconfigure.
The
Yeah.
historic
Leave it as it is.
Leave it as it is.
Eliminate the change
Yeah,
request
let's not-
to change the
Yeah,
historic
let's not,
overlay
let's just leave
district.
it be.
Yeah.
Yay.
Okay, good. Do you need someone to second that
I
motion?
do.
I second the motion.
okay, would you like to read it?
Pam moved to ask the selectmen to drop the request to reconfigure the historic district overlay.
Good. Would you send that to me?
Sure.
Because I'm gonna have to go and talk to the
It'll be in the
chair
minutes.
on that. She asked me to do that at the select board meeting. She wants to know about this particular thing.
Judy does?
Oh, that's our decision.
I'll go with you if you want.
Great, I would love to have
I
you
mean-
come in.
Yeah,
Is your new car working?
yeah.
Oh, good.
Do we have a process in place for someone that?
Wait a minute, let's
Sorry, go ahead.
vote on this first.
Oh, I made the motion. I can't.
Is there a second in the motion? All those in favor?
All in favor?
Okay.
Here.
Is there a process in place currently, if somebody feels like their house should not be part of the district, that they can ask to?
It can be done. It can be done.
Uh,
The thing, I
Is
don't
that-
think it can, I think that's
No.
something we just kind of decided on. I mean,
No.
it's
If it's in the district, it's in the
in the
district.
district.
If
Yeah,
you're in the
you can't
residential
recede from the
district, you can't decide,
That's true. And
you
if
don't
their-
wanna, you know.
Yeah,
If their
I don't wanna follow
property
the
isn't
rules.
contributing, it would have been classified as non-contributing anyway, right?
Yes, but it's still in the district.
Right.
If it's not contributing,
And so therefore, I forget who you were speaking with via email. He said the district as a whole is historic.
yeah,
Right,
Yeah.
this is the fellow that you
And-
were working with, Susan, I think that's
Right,
who you
the
mentioned.
district as a whole is historic and you can't recede from,
right.
you can't recuse yourself from the district just because you don't wanna participate.
But if you have a non-contributing property within the district,
You're still in the
do
district.
the requirements for COAs change? Or
No.
is it still the
No.
same?
You are
Okay.
in the
But
district.
that,
Okay.
that should be told to you, the question should go to the code enforcement officer who gives you the reply that says, no, you do not belong there. You do not need to do a COA.
If you're not in the district. If you're in the district, like when I went for my COA for my extension, I walked into the code enforcement and I said, I need to get a building permit to extend this. And he said, yep, here you go, here's your forms. And then he said, what's your address? And he goes, oh, and right over to the planning person.
Okay,
And you need to fill out a COA, you need to get approved, and that's how it went.
okay,
You're in this district, boom,
okay,
yeah. You're adding on to an existing structure, so there you go.
okay.
I don't want to change it. Period.
Right.
Yeah,
Too hard, what we did. And after talking with Gordon, I realized how, and we should do it this next select board.
if I was gonna change any of this.
Let's
I would
not
stand on the other side.
walk around waiting,
Churchill Street.
getting the pile so we can dump it in front of them. Let's do it one at a time. Maybe that might be the best way to do it.
Yeah, I think, to ask them, because the rest of it, I think they'll put on the warrant.
Sure.
I don't think there's gonna be a whole problem with that.
Yeah.
I suspect that for $750, the lawyers will tell Judy, go fry ice.
Mhm.
Because it is just boilerplate.
Yeah,
Well, when I
Yeah.
said lawyers to them, it was really funny to see their faces suddenly, and the giggle came out.
Yeah,
is there a reason why that, guess it's the western side of Churchill Street that's not in the historic district?
I have absolutely no idea.
That the powerhouse is on that, and those houses are built in
But the powerhouse
1790 and.
is already National Register. That's
Yeah,
its
that's
protection.
Theoretically, it should be a little bump on the side there because
Yeah.
it is a National Register property.
Yeah, but there's several other properties along there that.
Yes, I agree. And one of them, yeah, my sister and brother-in-law owned for years.
I'm
Is
just
it,
curious.
we'd have to look at the adjoining tax maps to see if the street is a dividing line, because they base the
It is-
The
district
street is a
on
dividing line.
streets and property lines. So it might have been easier just to go up Churchill Street if one side of Churchill Street is in a different zone.
Well, it's like my street, though, the eastern side of Fort Hill Street is Village 1, The western side of Fort Hill Street is Village 2.
But they're both in the village. They're both in the zones.
Right, but zone district differently. So across the street can have a restaurant, I can't. I can have a
But it's
lawyer's
still in the
office, but
historic.
I can't have
It's
that.
still historic.
Yeah, but it's just zoned differently.
It's
So
zoned
I-
differently, but as far as historic properties, it's the same.
Right, so that's why I'm wondering, there's a small portion of Village 1 on either side of, I'm sorry, smack in the middle of Village 2. You have Village 1 here, and then there's Village 2 here up on Churchill Street. And it doesn't go to the western side. There's nothing on the western side.
Probably have to sit down and talk with whoever laid out the zoning for that.
Yeah, it's like it's Route 27 and Churchill Street there. And I
It's
don't know.
arcane, that's, when we were doing the original zoning, it was center lines of roads.
Right. I'm
And
wondering-
I think the western side of, I very well could be wrong about this one, I think it's rural, part of the rural district, but maybe not, I can't remember.
You know,
I
that
don't
sort of
think
rings a
it
bell,
is.
because,
On the other
Unless
hand,
it's really against, putting their farm, and also the Sorrells were
Yep.
too. And so they didn't want any part of the,
but that shouldn't come into play whether the personal property owner.
oh, I know what you mean.
But
I'm just saying
then,
that.
on that sense, say you do own over there where you're not designated historic, and you want to become that, can you?
Well,
You can be
can't.
accepted into the historic district, there's a whole thing of how to line out to do it in this, it's a complicated thing. It has to be approved by the selectmen. I
But
remember.
that's good to know.
Am I thinking of another one? I think it has to go to town meeting.
Well, that-
Don't quote me on that, I can't.
And
I
that
think
area
another
right
thing-
by the powerhouse was going to become a retirement home,
Can you imagine
10 years ago, where we had a completely different, and the man who bought the house right over there, the big white house that had a lot of problems with fires. There is somewhere around 250 acres. And what he did, he bought the woods and did all the, he did actually do a clear cut. And at that time, I was the president of LCHA, and I found out from the town manager that he was gonna build a retirement home there. And there wasn't any way that we could actually stop it. Fortunately, economics stopped it. But I think there are certain spots that we really do need to try and figure out how to get them into the zone. But I really like the idea that somebody's gonna want to have to do it.
The powder house shouldn't be a problem.
No,
Right,
it's
because
not
it's
a
over
powder
here.
house.
Yeah.
No, but I'm saying, it's like was identified, it's not actually in the zone, but it is municipally owned. So it doesn't require anything other than the select board designating it and attaching it to the historic district.
Mhm. But that's not, I have to bring up the fact, Bath is having a big trouble with their waterfront.
Oh, where are they?
And people are building on it, and they want to build 5-story houses.
Yeah.
Right, so I think that's something that the planning board would have to go through, because the planning board would have to go through a site walk and anything, so that doesn't even.
But the historic commission, if it's still alive in the next, 10 or 15 years, is going to have to lay some groundwork.
Right, you have to look towards the future
Yeah.
and protect what we have now. Like they have protected wetlands. Okay, we're gonna have protected historic lands.
And there's so many people with so much money, and they really don't care about historic preservation. Let's move on, okay?
Okay, check.
I think we've really got a really good start on that. And I'm gonna
10.4.2,
Thank you.
check that one.
10.4.
10.4.2.1.
Wait, one.
That'll get you to how that works.
Okay,
Thank you.
website,
Yes.
Facebook.
Yes.
We,
have big ideas. Big.
First of all, we need to establish, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
No, go
interrupt.
ahead.
We need to get an email address so that we can develop it, so that it wouldn't be part of our own personal emails, because then if we die or leave, then it's all linked to us. Hey, things can happen. This year, anything can happen. So we would need to get an HPC email to establish Facebook and Instagram. Once we do that, then I would go, you and I being admins, and we can load up pictures and put links on them, and I can go around town, Instagram, shoot things, upload them, and that would really draw things in and get more people into the HPC, more people interested in Wiscasset and its preservation. I don't know if I mentioned it with Instagram and Facebook. I have personal pages just for my house, and there are over 1,400 people following my house and its development, and it's because of all the hashtags I use, and people ask questions about preserving and what products to use and how do you go about doing this. And within that, I also follow many sites like New England Historic Society,
Yeah.
who follow me,
Information, yeah.
and you're made aware of things that are going on,
Sure,
even within
sure.
that you may not be aware of. So if we can get that developed and get going, all we need is that email address.
So we'll have to check with Marion, and you or I can own this. One, I know Susan, you have a wiscasset.org email address, I believe.
Wiscasset.net.
Wiscasset.net. What we need to do to get like an info@hpc.wiscasset.org or net or whatever the town uses, we'd have to make sure that one of us checks it on a really regular basis. And then we have to find out from Marion what the rules are about a Facebook page, what's allowed on it, what isn't, who needs to approve it, does anybody need to?
Is there a social media protocol that we should follow?
Exactly, thank you. So social media protocol.
Has she given you any
there's-
indication on who the contact person is that handles the town website?
Nope.
To make a link?
No, she pointed us to Kathy, but surely they have a web guru, but
They do,
some,
and it's really difficult to get them on, yeah.
but I mean, some
Is
of
there-
the changes that could be made, we could probably figure out how to make it and submit the page code to the web guru.
Right, is it coded or is it not coded? Because if it's not coded and we can just easily,
Do like a WYSIWYG sort of like.
great,
Yeah,
yes.
we could,
There is a way, you were saying about check it, if you have, oh Lord, I think it's Google, goes through email, I'm on it for DePonte. Because.
Oh, you mean like just check if there's a available,
What our new president did was to get everybody on, we were all doing personal email for communication.
right,
He said he didn't want that. So he got us on, I think it's called Google Mail. You go through Gmail, you
Mhm.
set up a Gmail account, and then I am Susan@deponte.org.
okay,
And I said, Tommy, I am not going to do this. And he said, yes, you are, because I'm going to show you how it comes into your email account
Yep.
every time you get something. It just goes
just
automatically to your
forwards it right
personal.
there, yeah, that's what my website does.
Yeah, so that's, that will be a help, I think,
Yeah,
to get that set up.
yeah.
The
so we
other,
need to get with whoever that,
Well, first we need to make sure from Marion that we can actually move forward with this.
I've already asked, we can,
And we can, okay,
we
good.
can.
Okay, good. So we can,
Ah.
I wonder if there are what the protocol is. So she may have something that we need.
Yeah, and it's a strange thing, Catherine also knows a lot about it, but I know what they're doing now, they're trying to take work off of her because she's
Yeah.
being so
great,
involved
so
in
we'll take
everything
off
else.
this off her hands.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what I was just about to say, is that we could take that off, and actually, you guys probably have 1,000 times more knowledge of what you're talking about than, because I've heard that the person who's running it is really slow at doing it.
All right, well,
I've developed websites before, we can do it.
Yeah,
so.
and it would be great if we had that under our control.
If we have it under our control, we can make changes like,
Yeah.
Mhm.
we can, you know, as long as there's enough bandwidth and space on it, then we could really come forward.
Well, just
Get a
keep
link
us,
That says something that historic Westcasset attached to the
Yeah, well, that's
HBC
what
site.
we had talked about, but then we still need to follow some type of protocol that we're still an entity of
Right,
that.
that's right, we're an entity of the town, so we have to follow very
There's
strict rules
protocols, yeah.
about the way.
Yeah,
But we were thinking we could have historic photos on there, and I walked by the library last night, and they are starting to work on scanning all of their images and letters and all that stuff, so if we could start getting a bunch of the historic photos from around town and maybe feature a property every month, do some little story before and after, that would be cool.
Also, I think with LCHA, they used to have a postcard collection.
well, they have more
We
than
had
that, they have a
postcards.
website.
Leslie had, no, not Leslie, Seaver.
Yeah, Seaver does have some cool postcards.
He does, yeah.
Okay, but
Yeah,
then
and there's
somebody
a-
would have to scan them.
Somebody was talking about a box of postcards somebody has, and I got that secret place up in the jail has a whole bunch of stuff too.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's true. So Lincoln County Historical Association may have some really cool
Yes.
images too.
And they, as I said, they also have a website, which can be a link, and you can also talk to them. and
Yeah,
say,
they don't
"Well,
have a lot of our stuff on their website, they just have basically the jail, so we would have to, I mean, we could link to that, but I would love to be able to get, you know, old and new pictures, and
Oh,
some of
yeah.
these, like, my neighbor across the street has a book that's been handed down from owner to owner to owner of the changes of her house,
That
so.
would be great.
Right, so it may not be something that's in the library, but
Right.
this could be something that we could put out there and say, if you have old pictures of your house, you know, you can upload them to the Facebook page, you can, you know, send them to us and we will upload them to our website.
That
And
would
we
be
can,
great.
yeah, there's a
And we could
lot.
have a collection by address maybe.
Yes, yeah, oh God, yeah, yes, by address,
That would
not
be
by the
great.
Mrs. Brown house,
Right, by
because that
address.
drives me crazy.
Question, could we put on this website I've got bits and pieces of alternative materials or available materials?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
what we had talked about that, of links of available for people who want to restore. We talked about links to, like, you mean like approved things that we would,
Yeah,
right, like approved things that we had, and we also said,
Suggested materials.
yes.
yeah, so they don't have
Oh,
to
sure.
go for cheap vinyl.
Thank you. Thank you.
Or tin roofs.
So that's the Facebook page. We still need to figure out a way to get approval from the select board to get postage and $200 to send out this postcard and to,
Okay,
I've also, let me go ahead with this one. I had extensive conversation with the town manager. And I said it earlier, and everybody says, wait, okay. The $1,000 is only for the secretary, period, paragraph, end of trivia.
yes,
yes, but.
Now, what we can do is that if we do put out a request to find somebody who will do this work, then we can use the money and she can, and it's really difficult trying to figure out, can we use this money for mailing for
No.
what we're trying to do?
no,
And the reason, and I'll be quite truthful with you, the reason that I was so bumfuzzled by the fact that the board didn't understand what we were trying to do. I didn't think that your proposal, and I was told they are not going to okay it for the mailing, period. And Catherine, she talked to Catherine and also to Kim, and they're not happy. They did not, well, how did she put it? They showed a negative attitude toward another mail-out. And that's why
Yep.
Marion sent that letter that was put out by the first town manager that did not go to all the homes. We happened to get one, and I can remember being surprised that we did get it. But for some reason, it didn't encompass all the people here.
But she says it did. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. In what she wrote, she said it went to every household.
But a lot of people said to me, how come we didn't get a letter? And I, you know, it's really difficult to figure out. Now you can speak.
Well, I was just going to say that there is a method by which the town can accept money and put in, we'd have to talk to Bernice, who, thank God for that woman. Oh, boy. I have hopes for this town if we can only keep her in place for a while.
You look massive, those are special.
Grants and donations.
Well,
Yeah, and it can do that, and
10.1.10.
the town is, I think, there's a boilerplate that they can spend monies for that purpose. I think it's a boilerplate thing if, on the town warrant that's already been voted in. Therefore, if Bernice will set up a fund or
An
a
account.
line item, and again, I'm perfectly willing to go in and talk to her about it.
That's in the ordinance.
Yeah, in our ordinance, in our,
10.3.1.10, historic preservation gifts, grants, and funding.
yeah,
Received within a fiscal year from entities other than the town may be expended with town meeting approval solely for purpose of historic preservation in the town of Wisconsin. A dedicated fund shall be established by the town's treasurer to receive any unused gifts and grants to receive the current year.
yes, but what I'm saying is,
We can
I
establish.
think we can establish the fund, and I think the June vote at the town meeting to allow the town to expend such gifts would still cover us. I will talk to Bernice about that. Otherwise, if we just establish it
Right.
and that hasn't gone through, then we have to wait for town meeting vote.
Why not?
But I think we're okay on it.
Since we are working, the select board has a budget, correct?
Yeah.
And they say that we work for the select board. So wouldn't we just take from their budget, listen, we need this?
They
I
won't
mean,
give it
it's
to
essentially an
us.
office supply, it's essentially
Right, it's-
office supplies,
Yeah.
it's a mailing. It seems like this is such a small expenditure that I can't believe that there isn't some way.
You're absolutely
Get
right.
funding.
Yeah, and both of you are, you know, all three of you have said exactly what it is. But for some reason, they're so tied up with the fact that if this letter went out in 2015,
Well,
and
this
God
letter
knows
went
we
out
have
in
more people,
2015.
they're gonna say, oh, well, we've already done this, we don't need to make the expenditure, and that's gonna be their particular thing. Now,
Okay, so here's the thing, how many houses have been sold between
That's
2015 and
exactly-
2018, and these people are not aware?
That is in part because we have no planner.
and that's exactly it. When
Because
when it
We have no
boils
planner, we
down.
have no real estate people, so here's the thing, Marion, we're in a historic town. You are a manager of an historic town on the National Registry. These people own property here, and they need to be made aware of it. And if the real estate agents aren't being made aware of it, then we as a town as a whole need to be made aware of it. This is the most least expensive way to do this. And effective.
Well,
I'll-
I have to go, I agree with you, but you're just, it's
I'm beating
not
a dead
gonna
horse.
fly. It's gonna be shot down.
Marion, I hope you're watching. This is what we want.
We can, why don't we, I have talked talk to her about social media protocol? Why don't I try asking her once
Sure,
again?
I think
It
that's,
doesn't
I think
hurt
that's
to
it,
ask
and it's
her.
also important for the fact that we are gonna try and get grants. Now, if we do get a grant that comes in for doing exactly this,
But until that time.
then we
have
need to
nothing.
I
have
know.
Susan go to and talk and make sure that we have this ability to go in and say, okay, this is, we got $5,000 for this grant, this is what we're gonna set
And in
up.
the interim, we establish those things that we want to put on the card, the Facebook site link and Instagram.
Right, because the card can't go out until our website is improved anyway, because we're pointing
Correct.
everybody back to the website and to the Facebook page.
Yeah, and if we mail that out with like, sorry, we're under construction,
Right.
it's not gonna look good.
Yeah, so when we improve the actual HPC landing page as part of the town, I was thinking we would take that overlay map, have it right there, as soon as you get to the page, you don't have to sort through 10 pages
Yes.
of the ordinance, the map is right there. You have a link to the COA submission, like, here's the checklist for submitting a COA. So it's a really easy process. And that's another thing I think we need to talk about is, what does it look like right now when somebody brings in a COA, from start to finish, what happens to that COA? Who handles it? Who date stamps it? Blah, blah, blah. So that's another thing we really need to put on the checklist.
Yep.
That's the one that I would have to talk about with, because when we do a COA, it goes through the process. If it goes into the code enforcement officer has a great part, and I'm just going to put in a little sideline to this, because the code enforcement officer's wife's maiden name is Sewell. And it happens to be that my wife and I own the Sewell house. And she is the granddaughter of Sam Sewell, which is, who is the was the director of the Maine Railroad. But back to what you're saying about the COA. They usually call me and I tell them what is expected of them and where to get the papers. Now, Gordon and I were talking on the fact that there's a whole bunch of papers on that door. And unless the code enforcement officer is there, you just have a locked door. And they have to go there at a certain time. That can be sort of frustrating. But once they fill out the papers, I was looking at the actual COA, and it's not badly written.
I think it could
It can be
tightened
cut
up
down. It can be
bit.
cut down to a little
It's
bit.
been cut down a lot already.
I like what Leslie said about a checklist. Did you see the code enforcer? Is this a permanent structure?
Yeah, and it just,
And these are what you can expect from us, a response, and by this date.
Yeah,
and,
within the days
10
we
weeks,
set up.
yes. And if we have that checklist added to it, it makes the person trying to make the changes a little bit more confident in us
Yeah.
and makes them more informed of the process
Right.
instead of going, what goes next?
Yeah,
Sure.
exactly.
How long do I have to wait?
Right.
You know, I need to call my contractor, I've got a contractor waiting, you know,
Right.
he's on hold.
It's the same process that the planning board is having a problem with. Al Cohen stood there and told you about the
Right, exactly.
four different applications to the planning board for things that were in
Right.
existence since February.
And so if
No
the code
continuity.
enforcer's if the code enforcer's the first point person for our form, then he should have something on his door when it's locked. If you need a form, please go to the website, download it. If you don't have a printer,
It should
then come
be.
here, or,
On the outside of the door.
They're outside the door, they're not
Right.
inside.
In those
but
slots.
People pull things
It's right
out
on
and stick
the-
it in the wrong
Right.
hole and, I mean, it's.
go
it's
see
real.
that, yeah. If you have questions,
Yeah, and the
email
problem is
info.
we've got one code enforcer, if he's the logjam because he's always out and about and he's super busy, we don't want people to be like, I can't even find the code enforcer and he's not returning my calls.
Right.
So we've got to figure out a way to be more accessible, more organized, get things done like in a very organized process every single time. So if you're not around, or you're sick, or I'm sick, or anybody, like, there's always somebody that pulls out the checklist and can walk someone through the process, and with confidence, they feel like we are all on the job.
Well, I've already talked to the code enforcement officer, and he's gonna come in, he's trying, I invited him to the first meeting that we have in the month of October, which is, I think, the 4th. And we had a really nice talk, and he's been around here for a long time, and has been a carpenter, and just, but he's up to his ears. And probably a little bit, I think he's probably using oxygen because of all the things that he's got to do.
Yeah.
And again, until we get the thing is, what are we waiting for? Why don't we get somebody, either assistant town planner or somebody?
It's not gonna happen, because they've already raised taxes, they don't want to spend any money. It's gonna cost them another 30, 40, 50,000 a year to get a town planner. I don't think it's gonna happen anytime soon.
We did try and get the he was the planning officer of Lincoln County. And he did come in and help us. But when I said, would you take a permanent job here? He said, you can't pay me enough. And I thought, ooh, that's good. And he would have been really good at it, because he really understood what was going on. So, and another thing is, who's going to do the typing?
Yeah.
I have to negotiate if we get COAs. And who's going to spend the money for the stamps? I don't mind. What I would do is that I would write up the letters of saying, the fact that you passed the COA, and we're supposed to do that. But that was a job that was part of the town administration.
Well, see, that's where the question lies here.
If you,
Is that while we don't, when this commission was formed and we asked Ben or Jamal about budget items, and he said, okay, your budget is my budget, so what you need comes from the planning department. Now, it has now evolved into, there is no planning department, so this commission, the planning board, and the ORC don't have any financial support other than the town manager's funds.
Okay, so here's the thing.
So what I'm asking is, if there is no funding for any of these offices that normally came out of the planning department, there has to be, or needs to be, the question going to the administration of, there is no permanent office, but we still need a budget.
Yeah.
They took the budget and applied it to the tax relief. But apparently they did that without asking us. They took our budget, because we're part of the
It
planning.
needs to be an annual thing, not just, because that was a 1 year, in my
Right,
opinion, that
because
was 1 year.
Right, so yeah, we voted to have the planning, what the hell is his name? Planning director, planning board person, planning guy. Town planner, thank you, town planner.
Yeah,
We voted to put the town planner back on. So we technically have a town planner, we just don't have a physical person. But we have no budget for this town planner because they took the money and put it to tax relief. So, they did that in error. Because they should have checked with us, and they left us high and dry without any money. So, it's gotta come out of somewhere.
So
They shouldn't have done that.
All the commissions that were dependent on the planning office
Right.
need to apply to select board, town manager, the town, to be put on the list of entities to do a budget input.
So do we put that on the warrant, that we want a budget for the HPC?
yes,
Yeah,
Well,
let's,
And
so
good luck getting it.
hey,
But
it's
bring-
worth a shot. Nothing
Well,
ventured, nothing
we need
gained.
to bring it up at a select board meeting publicly.
Right, we need it on the next town warrant that the HBC needs a budget. Because right now, you took our budget and gave it to the tax people. Without checking with us.
And basically.
And left us high and dry.
basically it
And now
comes
you
down
won't
to
give us any money
If
for
we have no
no.
budget, we can't function. Why are we here?
Exactly. They want us to fail.
It's been 2 years of wanting us to fail.
Well, we're not gonna fail.
If we've got
Yeah,
$1,000,
we aren't.
if we've got $1,000 for a secretary, and perhaps that secretary is also, will also have like a petty cash fund, then there would be postage. And
Secretary will not have a petty cash fund.
not at all,
No, that's not the way town finances
huh?
work.
So how?
How does she
Let
get
me
all the
talk to
papers?
Bernice.
Okay, because that secretary is still going to need to mail
And
things.
the thing is, probably the mailing, as long as it's not a big mailing. John's letters, John types it up in Word, ships it to Kathleen, she prints it and sends it, as long as she doesn't have
That's
to
what,
send it.
yeah, that's right.
As long as she doesn't have to write it, I think she'll be cool with that.
Okay.
It's worth a try anyway.
But I'll be billing you all for stamps.
No, because you will not be sending them.
Oh, I know.
You know.
The way things have been revolving around, I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't say, well, you know,
Nothing ventured, gotta ask.
yeah,
See,
right.
I think if it's just a question of her, 30 seconds, she prints it, she prints an envelope, it's done.
Yeah.
Sure.
She's good.
Worst case scenario, you can print it and print the envelope and give it to her to send.
Mhm.
Yeah,
But I think if it goes through her, that's a better thing, because it makes,
It's better. It's more organized and it's not
Yes.
printing material and toner and paper from out of
Yes.
your pocket. And we also need to be able to figure out as part of our checklist, when the person has sent that final acceptance
Yes.
letter, that it's part of like check, yeah. And so
Check
that
and
person's
dated.
application has the checklist on top of it with all the things we did and the date we did all those things.
Yeah.
And the final thing is a letter. It doesn't have to be a different letter every single time, it could be a form letter with
Yeah,
the dear
yeah.
blank and then signature on the bottom.
Easy
So
peasy.
it's the exact same for every single person.
I agree, that's perfect. Yeah, very cut, dry, concise, doesn't take a lot of time, boom.
Now, John, when you go into figuring out what you're gonna want to have the secretary do,
I
Agreed.
think,
no, you have to keep in mind, you have $1,000 at minimum wage at 66.6 hours.
Okay, good.
I think the terms of it are for a recording secretary.
Yeah.
Then
That means she comes in, she takes the notes, she prints them up. That's it.
That's it.
That is what Jackie Lowell gets paid for.
Wow.
It's way less than what she actually does.
She actually does a lot because she's on other boards.
Right.
But as secretary to the select board, that's what she does.
So this day-to-day, this, few hours every week or a few hours every 2 weeks is not part of that budget then? Is that what you're saying? We don't really?
No, what I'm saying is that we don't have a secretary
We have a
in the
recording.
sense of a secretary who will write letters for us,
Right.
except we have
Just
a
recording.
recording secretary.
Right.
Um,
So at the end of the year, since we don't have a recording secretary, what happens to that
Goes back
$1,000?
in this town general fund.
Huh. Town general fund. And what happens with that?
Tax relief,
Huh.
or
Taking care
whatever
of
they
the
claim.
But
here
I
to
hope we'll have a recording secretary before next June.
Listen, I would certainly take a recording secretary, no matter what. I mean, if they're gonna give us the money, fine, let's use it. But I agree completely with you on the, what kind of monies are you gonna give us to run our job? You
Mhm.
really want us to run a job, or are you just sending us in circles?
Mhm.
And that's exactly what they're doing. I think, in fact, I know, town administration, Catherine Honorato, has to support a lot of people.
Yeah, she does, she's.
And she's overworked
Yeah.
now. We have to be supported. And I'm sorry she's overworked. And again, I will do as much as I can to type. And I will type a letter to David Polk. But if we start getting a lot of COAs, then I'm gonna be dropping them in her lap and say, you know, you have to take care of it. And she's been doing that for all the COAs in the past,
We
you know,
should,
year and a half.
Just, should we do, you and I, or the group, sit down and do a general letter with
Yes.
empty blanks,
Yeah.
Yeah, just a form letter.
a form letter.
I'll
And,
create it via electronically, if you
yeah,
have
and,
something that you
and
normally
just, you
write.
know,
That's
probably need several
Yeah, set
different
out,
ones,
form
like,
letter.
with this
Sure.
particular thing, your application, you know,
your application for this site on this date, yada
Yeah,
yada.
well, that's what I've done.
Or you're not
I've got
approved,
one
or
that I
not
use.
Right.
You know, every, you know, when we pass and.
so all you gotta do is type in the name, the
Yeah,
date,
and I-
the address.
Yeah,
and-
I've got that for that piece. But
So then,
when let me just put this in before you put yours in. When a person comes in, like Dave came in with all the COA filled out and the pictures and everything. Now, who is going to copy it? Who is gonna send it out to the commissioners? Before, it was working great. I had no problem. We'd get news of the COAs and it would come to us at our website. And I thought that Catherine and I had this sort of trigger mechanism, that if she got a COA, it was all taken care of. She would print it up, she would put it in the box, like she did, and also send it out to the email. But suddenly, we've been told, she doesn't really have time to do these things now.
Well, then somebody's gotta do it.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's.
that's exactly my.
So
my
that's
statement.
when you
Who's
turn around
gonna
and you
do
go,
it?
oh, she doesn't have the time, so who does have the time?
Mhm.
And we're all volunteers,
Yeah.
and we're all doing,
Well, hopefully we'll get the form is online, so you can fill it out online, and hopefully we can just send it back.
So you can fill it out online, it's not editable online, I don't
You
think.
can
You
print
can
it.
print it, but you can't
Yeah.
actually fill it out
you can't do anything,
online.
you can only print
It's
it.
not an editable PDF. What we need to do is figure out a way to have everything, have a process so people that have a computer can do everything electronically, and that way we all have a copy immediately of what's been sent. We have a copy of the COA, nobody has to scan it, fold it, put it in little envelopes with stamps.
Right, it's just, my form is complete, and it goes to 7 people.
Yes.
Is the town, has the capability of supporting that?
I can ask.
Then that becomes a problem. I mean, we can guess. Or are you gonna attach this to this website, and that's the only place it's gonna be?
Well, we're available on the Wiscasset.org site, so it would be, you can find it here, you can find it there, you can find it on the Facebook site, here's a form. Yeah.
Okay?
But the thing is,
When it's filled out, and the button is pushed and it comes back,
It goes to our email address,
Right.
info@wiscasset.org or whatever our email address is. It
Right.
goes to our general mailbox, which we have to check daily.
no, it gets then immediately forwarded to you.
Right, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Forward to, yeah.
and I think that might work because the people who buy within the historic district and want to do restoration, things like that, are essentially involved. They have got computers. They
Yeah,
know how to use them.
Most people do.
Outside of the district,
We'll still have paper available.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but we should still be, because there are people outside of this particular area. That's one of the reasons why we're called the elitists on the hill, by the way,
So.
that are not able to have computers. Now, thank God we haven't had anybody come in who want to restore an old house. Usually the people who want to do those things are educated and they know how to use computers. So that it's a strange dichotomy here, because a lot of people don't like the historic district or the people involved with it because they're outside this. That nothing really matters to them.
There's nothing we
You
can
can say
do
that.
about that.
I know we
think that's
can't,
getting
but
our
I just
way.
want us to realize that.
Again, that goes back to the elevator speech.
Yeah,
Sure.
exactly. We have to work on that
Convincing the
advocacy.
rest of the town why we're here and what
Right.
we're trying to
That's
do and why it's beneficial to them.
Right.
Right.
Which is all part of going back to what we originally said, day one of this commission is to educate the folks of the town.
Right.
But it's the people outside of this particular historic area that we're trying to defend are the ones who are going to vote in the monies for a town manager. I'm not for a town manager, for a town planner. And that is going to be a hard sell.
Those are the folks that need to understand the economics beyond the farm.
Yeah.
That's where we're at here. If it's beyond the pizza shop at Flood Avenue, if it's beyond the
Morse farm.
Morris Farm, they don't want to know nothing.
Right?
Not true.
Well, not totally, but they seems to be the folks that are in the group that vote against these things, because it doesn't affect them personally. They don't think it does. They don't realize the economics, but they don't think it's to them personal.
And that's
Because they're
cold hard
uneducated, so
fact.
that's our job to educate them.
Exactly.
Agreed,
Yeah.
agreed.
We're gonna have
Okay.
to win people over one at a time. But, some of the annoyance could be, our process has been a mess and people are annoyed
Yes.
with trying to work with us because we're not organized enough. So this is our opportunity to lock it down.
Yep,
Let's get,
I agree. Streamlined, direct, precise, get to the point.
So,
All right,
good.
let's wrap it up.
Okay, are we
Okay,
are we
I just
on
have
the,
one other point under new business.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing this out on general principles because we should be law abiding. We are supposed every year, or you are supposed every year, the royal we, to elect a chairman, vice chairman, and secretary. Secretary will be hired. Just saying.
And we're supposed to have 5 regular members and 2 alternates.
Right.
And we do not have alternates, and
We do not have.
As I don't know
Five
when-
members anymore either.
I was
Do we have a
wondering, what
date
about
on
Don Jones?
Question again, please.
What about Don Jones as a possibility to be
Don
on board?
Jones? Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know how it shows.
I think I did approach him,
Oh, okay.
and he was too busy. I thought the greatest source of getting commissioners would be LCHA, but that's another difficulty because they're so involved with doing what they're doing with the jail and the Pottawar courthouse and
Yeah.
and the house over Damascus. Again, I think we should run an article or get an article or
Yeah.
just wanted people interested in historic preservation.
Yes.
And let's see what that drags up.
And I think when that time comes, as a new person, as well as Leslie's a new person, that when we do get the new people, that we give them a copy of the ordinance and we give them a copy of the COA and familiarize themselves with that, along with the application, so that they know what they're getting into.
And that's essentially what we do get. One of my comments to people when they call me is I said go to the town website read the historic ordinance.
Well, yeah, but we should give that to them. as a-
And but you know, people do that.
Yeah.
And I said, this is gonna, if you read this, and it's only my background, and for instance, knowing federal air regulations, that everybody has got to read the rules. And
Okay.
read them again, and probably read them again and again, and figure out how it's gonna work with you.
And reading those rules, again, I go back to what Susan said about voting for chair, vice chair, et cetera. We do need to do that since that has been skipped over. so-
Years.
Well, it happened last year.
What was the date last year?
Well, our annual, but our first meeting was November of 16.
The ordinance says it should be done in June, because the term is from June
Well, no, but
30th.
that was when we're set. The date of appointment basically went to June, but there was not the first meeting until November, I
Because
believe.
it was a problem getting enough people on the board.
Okay.
And it
Well,
was-
and and of course Wendy she
I
told me today that her time was up,
What is her last day?
October, or what was it, September 29th?
No, she's resigning.
Has she
Well,
officially resigned?
her time may be up. If she was a 3-year, see, the original appointments were meant to be staggered.
Right, it's 1 year, one
There
for
was
1 year, two for 2
1
year,
year,
and 3.
2 years, a 3-year, I think, and 4-year.
No, it only goes to
No,
3 years.
1, 2,
It's 1 for 1 year, 1 for 2 year, and 3 for 3 year.
But after the fact, then each replacement appointment would continue on for 4 years.
And
No,
4 years was not
The
mentioned.
replacement, for instance,
I came on for 1 year and my term expired. And I did not renew.
Oh, God.
we ignored that.
Hmm?
Yeah,
I did, I was happy.
I know, I do remember that. But the thing is that when Leslie was appointed, she was filling Richard Thompson's place,
Yes.
I think.
Okay,
Yes,
So her term is only for what his term would have been,
right,
the last of it. Same with Pam.
right. But we're trying to figure out Wendy's term, which one of the original, because she's one of she and John, you have resigned, so John and Wendy are the only 2 persons that were original appointments that are still in
Right.
place.
no,
Well, we could
I was
probably sort
reappointed by
that
the
out.
select board.
Hmm?
I was reappointed by the select board, I think.
Yeah, but you
But
and
that all
I
happens-
were both on
Yeah.
1-year appointments, I think. No, you took a 2, I took a 1.
Yeah,
That all happens, I think they do it in the spring, don't they?
What, when the select board?
Reappoint the people. I
It
think it's the spring, I can't remember.
says, 10.3.1.2, regular members, the commission shall consist of 5 regular members and 2
Yeah.
alternates. The regular members who are first appointed shall be designated to serve terms beginning July 1st and ending June 30th as follows.
Right,
1 for 1 year, 2 for 2 years, and 2 for 3 years from the date of their appointment. Thereafter, commission members shall be appointed for terms of 3 years, except in those instances in which the appointment is made to fill a vacancy, in which case the appointment shall be for the remainder of the unexpired term. The Board of Selectmen shall act within 60 days to fill a vacancy, including expired terms. Regular members may be reappointed, and alternate members are pretty much the same. They shall participate in hearings and discussions. And then it goes on to 10.3.1.6. The commission shall elect annually a chairperson, vice chairperson, and a secretary from its membership. 3 members constitute a quorum for the transaction of business, but if less than a quorum, then the meeting will be adjourned.
So that goes back to the question, when do we hold the next election? Do we hold it based on the date from last year's elections?
Well,
Or when
I think it probably should be in July,
July.
because that's when everybody's term rolls around. I don't know.
Well,
but it,
do we know the date of the last election?
It was like last November.
Well, we can do,
Because that's when it was brought up, I believe, the last time.
well, then we can do a vote this November with the terms of saying this vote may be re-voted on in June to establish the new terms of July 1st through June 30th.
I'm not so sure that. Let's think on that.
Okay.
So meanwhile, we need to look for some members. When is it?
Yeah, I think all of us should look for, somebody. Again, both of you know Jim very well. And Jim was
great.
on a member here, and then the select board refused to reappoint him.
Well, maybe we can make him an
They
alternate.
might consider him again now that the MDOT stuff has calmed down, because I think maybe maybe they were just feeling like he was very vocal against.
When I talked to him last about that, because I knew Susan has an awful lot of things that she's doing, and
Yeah.
she's become what I call a counsel to us.
Yes.
And I asked Jim if he wanted to do that. And I think I mentioned this to you, he said he was really busy in what he was doing. And I think Jim would be it's so strange to see these, there are people who react to him. And I think that he knows a great deal, and for the years that we've been working with him, it was great to have him there on there. But there are some people who hold some very strange, they can't go forward in what we're doing.
Well, I would.
We might
advise him to
try.
do that.
Since I understand that president of LCHA, Danielson, is not going to run again.
No, he's not. He's not.
So there might be a thought.
I've already asked Ed, and he won't do it.
Have you asked
And Cameron?
Danielson?
No, I haven't asked him, but that was one of the reasons why I think it's fun that he's gonna go and see with us, and to this grant meeting and that. But
Oh, he is?
there's a reason why he decided that he couldn't do it, and it's a personal reason.
And Ed Kavanaugh won't.
No, he
No.
won't,
How about David Pope?
will not.
He won't.
I've asked, these guys, I know these guys for many years working with them, and they'd be wonderful. Bill Sutter, I've asked. Bill would be wonderful in there, because he and Judith, I've asked Judith.
I almost thought I'd gotten Judith.
Yeah,
And I almost thought I'd gotten Bill Gemmell.
Sally would
Bill,
be fantastic.
he would be, I've already, and I thought we really had him in, but Bill's got some serious health issues.
Yeah.
And,
Well, if anybody's watching, we're willing to take you on.
Right.
Please fill out an application.
We should probably wrap up, because we're still on the YouTubes and.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's frustrating, because you need more people. So,
And Gene, if you're watching, put it in the paper that we're looking for more people, and make us all look good.
but by the way, thank you for going to the town ordinance and bringing these things up and reading them.
Well, this is what we go by. We go by the
We really
code.
need to
Right,
start.
and that's so important.
Well, that's
because-
one of the things that I miss Ben. Ben always knew the codes back and forth and carried them with him. And he always,
Yeah.
as a backup, would use them to refer to. If anybody had any question, the code is right there, black and white. And that's the thing to do. If anybody has questions, you're reading direct from the code.
Yeah, I agree.
No question.
Well, thank you. I think, this is a really good meeting. And I really appreciate the fact that you all have developed hard armor. And that's something that you really have to have. So thank you. And does anybody else have any new business we'd like to talk about? Next meeting will be Thursday, October 4th at 5 p.m. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
I second the motion.
Let's go.
My third.
Moved, seconded, done.
All show of hand. We're on, okay, good.
Turn up your
If you
microphone.
don't receive minutes in the next 72 hours,
Okay.
email me and say, where are they? Don't forget them
Okay,
until
I
the day
will,
we're
I
supposed to
will.
meet.
Because we're gonna have to do that